My niece mocked my son after ruining his birthday cake, saying, "It's just cake." She wasn't ready for my response. Cake hit the floor with a soft, ugly thud. For 1 second, nobody moved. Then Liam's face crumpled, and he started to cry. Sarah stood frozen by the kitchen door, holding a stack of paper plates. She had spent 3 days planning this party. She had ordered the cake from the best bakery in town, a dinosaur cake with green frosting and little chocolate rocks. Because Liam loved dinosaurs more than anything in the world. Now it was smashed across the living room floor. Frosting smeared into the carpet. And standing right beside it, holding an empty tray she claimed to be just moving, was her niece, Chloe, 15 years old. Arms crossed, a small, cold smile on her face. "It's just cake," Chloe said, shrugging like it meant nothing at all. Liam looked up at his mother, his eyes full of tears. "Mommy, my dinosaur." Sarah knelt down and pulled her son close. Her heart was pounding, but her voice stayed calm. "It's okay, baby. It's okay." But it was not okay. Not even close. To understand what happened next, you have to go back 3 days, before the party, before the cake, before everything fell apart. Sarah had always tried to be a good mother. She worked long hours at a small accounting firm, and every night she came home tired but smiling because Liam was waiting for her at the door. He was 7 years old, gentle, a little shy, and obsessed with dinosaurs. He knew the names of creatures Sarah couldn't even pronounce. When his birthday came close, Sarah decided to make it special. Not too big, not too expensive, just enough love packed into one afternoon. She picked a small park near their home. She bought balloons shaped like dinosaur eggs. She spent her lunch breaks searching for the perfect cake. She also invited her sister's family. Even though something in her chest tightened every time she thought about it. Sarah and her sister Diane had never been close. Not really. As kids, Diane was always the one who got praised first, the one whose report cards were framed on the wall, the one whose achievements were celebrated loudly at every family dinner. Sarah had learned early to stay quiet, to not take up too much space. As adults, that pattern never really changed. Diane's family always seemed a little louder, a little more important at every gathering. And Chloe, Diane's daughter, had grown up watching her mother do it, smiling sweetly in public, but always finding small ways to make Sarah feel smaller. Still, Sarah invited them. Family was family, she told herself. Liam loved his cousin, even if the feeling wasn't always returned. She should have listened to the quiet voice in her head that told her something felt wrong. On the morning of the party, everything looked perfect. The park was decorated with green and orange balloons. A banner read "Liam turned 7" in bold letters. Sarah placed the cake carefully on the table, checking twice that it was steady, safe, out of the way of running kids. Liam wore his favorite dinosaur shirt. He kept running back to look at the cake, grinning every time. "Mommy, it's so cool," he whispered. "Can I show my friends?" "After we sing happy birthday, baby," Sarah said, kissing his forehead. Guests began arriving. Neighbors, cousins, a few kids from Liam's class. Diane arrived late, as usual, with Chloe trailing behind her, eyes glued to her phone. Sarah noticed something strange the moment Chloe walked in. She wasn't looking at the decorations or greeting anyone. She kept glancing toward the cake table, then back at her phone, like she was checking something. Sarah brushed the thought away. She told herself she was being paranoid, that she shouldn't have. The party moved along nicely for the first hour. Kids played games, laughed, chased each other around the grass. Sarah relaxed a little, watching Liam's face light up every time someone admired his dinosaur decorations. Then it was time for the cake. Sarah walked toward the kitchen to grab the candles, leaving the table for just a moment. That was all it took. When she came back, she found Chloe standing near the table, tray in hand, the cake already on the ground, frosting spread across the floor like a small, sad crime scene. "What happened?" Sarah asked, her voice sharp with panic. "It just ... slipped," Chloe said, not even trying to sound convincing. "Liam ran over. eyes wide with excitement, expecting to see his dinosaur cake for the first time. Instead, he saw a broken mess on the floor. His face fell instantly. "Where's my cake?" Silence spread through the yard. Every guest turned to look. That was when Chloe rolled her eyes and said the words that would replay in Sarah's mind for weeks. "It's just cake." Liam burst into tears. Not loud, dramatic tears, the quiet, wounded kind that come from a child who doesn't understand why someone would be cruel to him on his own birthday. Sarah knelt beside her son, holding him close, whispering that everything would be okay. But her eyes lifted toward Chloe, and for the first time, she noticed something on the screen of Chloe's phone, still gripped tightly in her hand, a photo. Already taken. Already open in a messaging app, ready to send. A photo of the cake. Lying broken on the ground, taken before anyone else had even noticed it was ruined. Sarah's stomach turned cold. This wasn't an accident. She looked up at Diane, who was already halfway across the yard, arms crossed, jaw tight, ready to defend her daughter before anyone even asked a single question. And in that moment, Sarah understood something clearly for the very first time. This wasn't just about a cake. This had never been just about a cake. Sarah stood up slowly, still holding Liam close to her chest. Her mind was racing, but her voice came out calm. "Chloe," she said, "did you take a picture of the cake before it fell?" Chloe's eyes flicked down to her phone, then back up. For a second, panic crossed her face. Then it disappeared, replaced by that same cold shrug. "So what if I did? It's just cake, and Sarah, why are you making this such a big deal?" A few guests shifted uncomfortably. Someone coughed. Nobody knew where to look. Before Sarah could respond, Diane appeared beside her daughter, placing a protective hand on Chloe's shoulder like she was shielding her from an attack. "Sarah, please," Diane said, her voice sweet but sharp underneath. "It was an accident. Cakes fall. Kids get upset. You're scaring everyone by making this into some kind of investigation." "She took a photo of it, Diane," Sarah said quietly, before anyone else noticed. "Why would she do that if it just fell?" Diane laughed, but it wasn't a real laugh. It was the kind of laugh people use to make an accusation sound crazy. "Are you serious right now? You're going to interrogate a 15-year-old at a 7-year-old's birthday party?" Sarah felt her face grow hot. She looked down at Liam, who had stopped crying but was staring at the ground, small and silent, like he was trying to disappear. That was enough. She wasn't going to fight in front of him. "Let's just clean this up," Sarah said, forcing her voice to stay steady. "We'll figure it out later." But later never came the way she expected. The rest of the party limped along awkwardly. Someone ran to the store and bought a plain grocery store cake, and Liam blew out candles on a cake that had nothing to do with dinosaurs. He smiled for the photos, but Sarah could see it wasn't a real smile. It was the smile of a child trying not to make things worse. Guests left early. The balloon stayed tied to the fence, swaying gently, useless now. As Sarah cleaned up, her cousin Mara lingered behind to help. Mara was quiet, usually careful not to get involved in family drama. But this time, she leaned close and whispered something that made Sarah's hands freeze mid-motion. "Sarah, I heard Chloe on the phone yesterday, talking to her friend. She said something about ruining the baby's cake to teach you a lesson." Sarah turned slowly. "What lesson?" Mara hesitated, glancing around to make sure no one else was listening. "I don't know exactly, but it sounded like she was planning it. Like it wasn't the first time she talked about doing something like this." Sarah's stomach twisted. She thought about the photo on Chloe's phone, the timing, the smirk. It all clicked together into something much darker than an accident. Why would she want to hurt Liam? Sarah whispered, more to herself than to Mara. Mara shook her head. "I don't think it's about Liam, Sarah. I think it's about you, that night." After Liam finally fell asleep clutching his favorite stuffed dinosaur, Sarah sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at her phone. She didn't know exactly what she was looking for, but something told her the truth was somewhere close, waiting to be found. She opened her messages and scrolled back through old conversations with Diane. Most were surface-level birthday wishes, holiday plans, nothing unusual. But then she remembered something. A group chat from months ago, one Diane had accidentally added her to before quickly removing her. Sarah had never given it much thought at the time. She had assumed it was a mistake, an app glitch. But now, sitting in the quiet kitchen, she wondered if it had been something else. She scrolled through her old notifications, searching for any trace of that chat. Most messages had disappeared, deleted the moment Sarah was removed. But one notification preview was still saved on her phone. Frozen in time from months ago, Sarah's fingers trembled slightly as she opened it. The preview showed only a few words, cut off before the full message. But it was enough to make her blood run cold. Double quotes. She always acts like her son is so special. Someone needs to remind her that the message ended there. Cut off and finished. But Sarah didn't need the rest of it to understand who had written it. Diane, her own sister. Sarah sat in silence for a long time, staring at those few words on the screen. Questions swirled through her mind, each one darker than the last. Had Diane really said something like that? About her? About Liam? Was this really about petty family jealousy, something that had been simmering for years, hidden beneath polite smiles and birthday cards? She thought back to their childhood, to the way Diane had always needed to be first, needed to be praised, needed to win every comparison between them. Sarah remembered swallowing her own achievements quietly, afraid of upsetting the delicate balance of their family. But this was different. This wasn't about who got better grades or who married first. This was about her son. Her sweet, gentle son, who had done nothing wrong except be happy on his birthday. Sarah closed her eyes, trying to steady her breathing. She thought about confronting Diane immediately, calling her right then and demanding answers. But something stopped her. If Diane had planned this, even indirectly, even just by planting seeds of resentment in Chloe's mind, then confronting her directly would only lead to more denial. More gaslighting, more blame shifted back onto Sarah. She needed proof. Real proof. Not a cut-off notification or a whispered rumor from a cousin who wanted to stay out of it. She needed the whole story. Sarah opened her laptop and began searching through old emails, old photos, anything that might explain the tension that had existed for years beneath the surface of her family. And that was when she found it. An old family photo album, scanned and shared years ago in a family group chat. Sarah clicked through the images slowly, smiling faintly at old memories of her and Diane as children. Then she stopped on one photo. It was a picture from a birthday party, decades old. Sarah, maybe 6 years old at the time, stood beside a cake that had clearly been ruined. Frosting smeared across the table, and standing beside her, young Diane, arms crossed, smiling the exact same cold smile Chloe had worn earlier that day. Sarah's breath caught in her throat. This wasn't new. This had happened before. Sarah stared at the old photo for a long time, her heart pounding in her chest. It was real. It was proof. Somewhere in the past, something almost identical had happened. A ruined cake. A young Diane standing over the wreckage with that same cold smile. Sarah zoomed in, trying to remember the day. Slowly, pieces came back to her. She had been 6 years old. It was her birthday. Their mother had made a strawberry cake, the only kind Sarah ever wanted as a child. She remembered crying that day too. She remembered being told to stop making a scene. She remembered her mother hugging Diane instead of her, telling Diane it was okay, that accidents happen. Nobody had ever asked if it was really an accident. Sarah sat back in her chair, feeling something shift inside her. This wasn't just jealousy simmering for a few years. This was a pattern, stretching back decades, one that had never been questioned, never been stopped. And now it had reached her son. The next morning, Sarah called Diane, hoping for a calm conversation. She didn't mention the photo. She didn't mention the notification. She simply asked if they could talk, just the two of them, about what happened at the party. Diane agreed. But the moment Sarah arrived at her house, she could feel the walls already going up, I already told you. It was an accident, Diane said. Crossing her arms before Sarah even sat down, Chloe had a photo ready. Diane, before it happened, you're twisting things. She probably just wanted a picture of the party, a picture of a broken cake. Before anyone even noticed it was broken, Diane's jaw tightened. Are you seriously accusing my daughter of planning to hurt a little kid? Do you hear yourself right now? Sarah took a slow breath, trying to stay calm. I'm not trying to attack Chloe. I just want to understand why this happened, maybe, Diane said, her voice suddenly sharp. You're just looking for someone to blame because you can't handle that your perfect little party didn't go the way you planned. The words hit harder than Sarah expected. This was the pattern she remembered from childhood, the quiet twisting of blame. Turning victim into villain with just a few careful sentences. This isn't about the party, Diane. This is about Liam. He's scared. He won't stop talking about it. Diane's expression flickered, just for a moment, something almost like guilt. But it vanished quickly, replaced by cold detachment. Kids get over things. Sarah, you're the one keeping this alive. Sarah left the house that day with nothing resolved. Only more confirmation that Diane would never admit the truth on her own. Over the following week, things at home grew harder. Liam, usually cheerful in the mornings, began waking up with a heavy, worried look on his face. One morning, as Sarah packed his lunch, he tugged gently on her sleeve. Mommy, do I have to go to school today? Sarah crouched down to his level. What's wrong, baby? Liam's eyes filled with tears. Some kids saw the pictures. Chloe posted them online. They're laughing at me. They keep saying it's just cake like it's a joke. Sarah's chest tightened painfully. She hadn't known about the pictures. She quickly checked her phone and found what Liam was talking about, a photo Chloe had posted the night of the party, showing the ruined cake on the ground, captioned with a laughing emoji and the words, "Some people take birthdays way too seriously, LOL." Comments filled the post, mostly from Chloe's friends, mocking and dismissive. A few even used Liam's name. Sarah felt something cold settle deep in her stomach. This wasn't just a mean moment anymore. This was public humiliation, aimed at a 7-year-old, spreading without any consequence. She held Liam close. You don't have to go to school today, sweetheart. We'll figure this out. That day, Sarah sat beside her son on the couch, holding him while he quietly watched cartoons, trying to forget the laughter of classmates who didn't understand why a broken cake could hurt so much. That Sarah didn't cry in front of him. But later that night, alone in her room, she finally let the tears fall, quiet and exhausted, wondering how much more her son would have to endure because of a family feud that had never been his to carry. The following days blurred together. Sarah threw herself into work to keep her mind busy, but every quiet moment brought the same question circling back. Why had Diane raised her daughter this way? Why had cruelty become something so easily excused in their family? One evening, while going through old boxes in the garage, Sarah found something she hadn't expected. A stack of old letters written between her mother and an aunt who had passed away years ago. Sarah had never read them before. They had simply been packed away after her mother's death. She sat down on the garage floor and began reading, expecting nothing more than old family gossip. But one letter, dated decades earlier, stopped her cold. Her mother had written about Diane's early childhood, describing a pattern Sarah had never known about. Diane, it seemed, had been deeply insecure as a young girl, constantly compared to a cousin who excelled in everything. Their mother had leaned into that insecurity instead of soothing it, praising Diane loudly whenever she outperformed someone else, teaching her, without meaning to, that value came from tearing others down, not building herself up. Sarah read the words slowly. Diane feels she must win, or she feels like nothing, her mother had written to their aunt. I fear this will only get worse as she grows older. Especially toward Sarah. Sarah's hands trembled as she set the letter down. Their mother had known. She had seen it coming. Decades ago, and had done nothing to stop it. Sarah sat there in the dim garage light, surrounded by dusty boxes and old memories. feeling the full weight of a truth that had been buried for far too long. This wasn't just about Chloe. This wasn't just about Diane. This was about generations of silence, allowing cruelty to be passed down like an inheritance nobody wanted. But nobody stopped either. Sarah wiped her eyes and looked at the letter one more time. Then her phone buzzed on the floor beside her. A text message sent late at night from a name she hadn't expected to see. Chloe. Sarah single quotes as heart skipped as she opened it. Unsure what to expect, the message was short, only a few words long. But they were enough to completely shift everything Sarah thought she understood about that day. "Aunt Sarah, I need to tell you something. Please don't tell my mom I texted you." Sarah stared at the message for a long moment before typing back, "I'm here. You can tell me anything." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, Chloe's next message came through. "It wasn't really my idea. Not all of it. Mom kept saying stuff about you and Liam for weeks before the party. Like how you always act like your life is perfect. She told me it would be funny to humble you a little. I didn't think it would make Liam cry that hard. I feel bad." Sarah read the words twice, her chest tightening with a strange mix of anger and sadness. Anger at Diane for planting these ideas in a 15-year-old's mind. Sadness for Chloe, who was clearly caught in the middle of something much bigger than herself. "Why are you telling me this now?" Sarah typed, "Because everyone at school is still talking about it. And I feel like garbage." I didn't think about how he'd feel. I just wanted Mom to be proud of me for once. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment. That last sentence explained everything. Chloe wasn't cruel by nature. She was a child trying to earn her mother's approval, the same way Sarah had once tried and failed to earn it herself, but understanding the reason didn't erase the damage. "Thank you for telling me the truth," Sarah wrote back. "I'm not angry at you, Chloe, but this needs to stop." "All of it, I know," Chloe replied. "I'm scared of what Mom will do if she finds out I texted you." Sarah set her phone down slowly, staring at the garage wall, thinking hard. For the first time since the party, she felt something other than helplessness. She felt clarity. Over the next several days, Sarah began quietly gathering everything she could. She saved Chloe's messages, careful not to expose her, but keeping them safe in case she ever needed them. She took screenshots of the cruel comments under the birthday post before Chloe, clearly guilt-ridden, quietly deleted it a few days later. She also reached out to Mara again, asking gently if she remembered anything else Chloe had said, or if there were other relatives who had noticed similar patterns from Diane over the years. What she discovered surprised her. Mara mentioned a cousin, Elise, who had once confided that Diane had spread rumors about her during a rough patch in her marriage, seemingly to make herself look better in comparison. Another aunt recalled an old argument where Diane had taken credit for organizing a family reunion that Sarah had actually planned entirely by herself. Small moments, never confronted, always excused. Sarah began to see the full shape of something that had been hiding in plain sight for years. A pattern so consistent that it could no longer be dismissed as coincidence. She wasn't imagining things. She wasn't overreacting. She had simply been the only one willing to finally look closely. Enough to see it. Sarah knew she couldn't fight this the way Diane fought, through whispers, manipulation, and quiet cruelty. She needed something different, something undeniable. She began writing everything down: dates, screenshots, the old letter from her mother, even the decades-old photo of the ruined birthday cake from her own childhood. She wasn't building a weapon to destroy her sister. She was building a mirror, one Diane could no longer avoid looking into. A week later, Sarah received an unexpected phone call from her Aunt Carol, the family's unofficial planner, the one who always organized the big gatherings. "Sarah, honey," Carol said cheerfully, "I wanted to let you know we're planning the annual family reunion a little earlier this year. Everyone will be there. I was hoping you and Liam could come. It's been too long since we all sat down together." Sarah's fingers tightened slightly around the phone. "The reunion. Every branch of the family gathered together in one place. All at once. It was the exact opportunity she needed. "We'll be there," Sarah said quietly, after hanging up. She sat in silence for a long moment, feeling her heartbeat steady into something calm and certain. She wasn't going to scream. She wasn't going to cause a scene the way Diane always accused her of wanting to do. She was simply going to tell the truth, clearly and calmly, in front of everyone who had spent years choosing not to see it. In the days leading up to the reunion, Sarah focused on Liam. She wanted him to feel safe again, to know that what happened wasn't his fault, and that being kind didn't make him weak. One evening, as she tucked him into bed, Liam looked up at her with quiet curiosity. "Mommy, are we going to see Chloe again?" Sarah hesitated. "Yes, sweetheart." At the family reunion, Liam frowned slightly. "Is she going to be mean again?" Sarah brushed his hair back gently. "No, baby. I'm going to make sure nobody is ever mean to you like that again." Liam studied her face for a moment, then nodded, trusting her completely. The way only a child could. Sarah smiled softly, but inside, her resolve hardened even further. She thought about the years of silence in her family, the letter from her mother, the old photo, Chloe's guilty confession, the whispered stories from cousins who had quietly suffered the same treatment. She thought about Liam's tear-streaked face on his birthday, and Diane's cold dismissal. "It's just cake." No, Sarah thought. It was never just cake. It was about power, about who got to hurt others without consequence, and who was expected to stay silent and accept it. That silence was about to end. The reunion was only 3 days away, and for the first time in years, Sarah wasn't afraid of what would happen when the truth finally came out. She was ready for it. Part 5. The major twist and confrontation. Day of the reunion arrived warm and bright. The kind of day that felt wrong for what Sarah was about to do. The event was held at Aunt Carol's large backyard, the same place the family had gathered every year for as long as Sarah could remember. Long tables were set up under white tents. Children ran across the grass. The smell of grilled food drifted through the air. Sarah arrived early with Liam, both of them dressed simply, calm on the outside. Inside, Sarah's heart pounded steadily, not with fear, but with quiet determination. She had gone over everything in her mind 100 times. She wasn't going to yell. She wasn't going to accuse. She was simply going to lay the truth on the table, clearly, calmly, and let the family see it for themselves. Diane arrived an hour later with Chloe trailing behind her, eyes down, clearly uncomfortable. When Chloe spotted Sarah, she gave a small, nervous glance, as if silently asking whether her secret was still safe. Sarah gave her a reassuring nod. She wasn't there to expose a teenage girl who had already shown remorse. She was there for something bigger. The afternoon moved along normally at first. Family members caught up, laughed over old memories, and passed around plates of food. Sarah waited patiently, watching for the right moment. The one Aunt Carol always created near the end of every reunion, a few minutes where she gathered everyone together to share updates, announcements, or memories. That moment came just as the sun began to lower in the sky. "All right, everyone," Carol called out, raising her glass with a warm smile. "Gather around. Time for our little family check-in." Chairs shifted. Conversations quieted. The family formed a loose circle near the tables, some standing, some sitting, all facing the center where Carol stood. Sarah felt her pulse quicken, but her hands stayed steady. When Carol finished her usual cheerful remarks, she turned toward the group. "Does anyone have anything they'd like to share?" Sarah took a breath and stepped forward. "I do," she said quietly. All eyes turned toward her. Diane's expression flickered, uncertain. "A few weeks ago," Sarah began, her voice calm but clear, "my son's birthday cake was destroyed at his party. Some of you were there, some of you weren't. I was told it was an accident." Diane's arms crossed instantly. "Sarah, please." "Not here," Sarah continued, steady and unwavering. "But it wasn't an accident. There was a photo taken before anyone else even noticed the cake was ruined. My son was mocked online, in front of his classmates. He was scared to go to school. A few relatives exchanged uneasy glances. Diane's face reddened. "This is a family gathering, not a courtroom," Diane snapped. "You're embarrassing yourself." Sarah reached into her bag and pulled out a folder, thin but heavy with meaning. "I'm not here to embarrass anyone," Sarah said gently. "I'm here to stop a pattern that's been hurting people in this family for a long time." She opened the folder and held up the old photograph. The one from decades earlier, young Sarah crying beside a ruined birthday cake. Young Diane standing over it with a cold smile. Gasps rippled softly through the group. "This happened to me too," Sarah said. "When I was 6. Nobody questioned it then either. Diane's face went pale. "That doesn't prove anything." Sarah then read a short portion of her mother's old letter. Careful, calm, without exaggeration. The words about Diane's insecurity. About the fear that history might repeat itself with Sarah. The backyard fell completely silent. "I'm not trying to hurt you, Diane," Sarah said softly. "But I can't stay quiet anymore. Not when it's affecting my son the same way it affected me." Diane's composure cracked for the first time. "You don't understand what it was like. Growing up compared to you every single day. Always feeling like I wasn't enough." "I understand more than you think," Sarah said gently. "But that pain doesn't give you the right to pass it on to Chloe or to let her pass it on to Liam." At the mention of her name, Chloe's eyes filled with tears. She stepped forward, voice trembling. "Mom, ... I didn't want to do it. You kept saying things about Aunt Sarah, about how she thinks she's better than us. I just wanted you to be proud of me." Diane turned toward her daughter, shock flashing across her face. "Chloe, I texted Aunt Sarah," Chloe admitted, her voice breaking. "I told her everything. I'm sorry, Mom, but it wasn't right. I saw how sad Liam was. It wasn't just cake." "It never was." The backyard remained silent, the weight of the confession settling over everyone present. Diane looked around at the faces staring back at her, some shocked, some sympathetic, some clearly disappointed. For the first time in years, there was nowhere for her to hide behind sweet smiles or clever deflection. "This is unbelievable," Diane muttered, her voice shaking. "You're turning my own daughter against me." "No one turned her against you," Sarah said quietly. She turned toward the truth on her own. That took courage. Aunt Carol, who had remained silent through the entire exchange, finally spoke, her voice gentle but firm. "Diane, is any of this true?" Diane's eyes darted around the circle, searching for support, but finding only uncertain, questioning faces staring back. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, without another word, she turned and walked quickly toward her car, leaving the reunion in stunned silence behind her. Chloe stood frozen, tears streaming down her face. Unsure whether to follow her mother or stay, Sarah walked over and gently placed a hand on her niece's shoulder. "You did the right thing," she said softly. "That doesn't make this easy, but it makes it right." Chloe nodded through her tears, and for the first time, Sarah saw not a cruel teenager, but a scared young girl who had simply been taught the wrong lessons by someone she trusted. As the family slowly began talking again in hushed, shocked whispers, Sarah looked down and saw Liam standing quietly beside her. Having heard more of the conversation than she realized, he looked up at her with wide, thoughtful eyes. "Mommy," he said softly, "is Chloe going to be okay?" Sarah knelt down, brushing his hair back gently, her heart full of complicated emotions. "I don't know yet, baby," she admitted honestly. "But I promise you, things are going to get better from here." In the distance, Diane's car pulled away from the driveway, tires crunching against gravel. Nobody knew yet just how much would change after that night, but something told Sarah, watching the empty space where her sister's car had been, that the truth, once spoken, could never fully be silenced again. The days after the reunion felt strange, like the whole family was holding its breath. Word spread quickly. Relatives who hadn't even been present that day soon heard the story, passed from aunt to cousin to uncle, each version slightly different, but the core truth staying the same. Diane had spent years building a quiet reputation as the put-together sister, the one who always seemed to have everything figured out. That image had shattered in a single evening. Sarah didn't call anyone to explain further. She didn't need to. She had said what needed to be said, calmly, with proof, in front of the people who mattered. What happened next was no longer in her hands. 3 days after the reunion, Sarah's phone rang. It was Chloe. "Aunt Sarah," she said, her voice small. "Can I come over? I want to talk to Liam, and to you." Sarah hesitated only a moment before agreeing. Chloe arrived that Saturday afternoon, standing nervously on the porch, holding something behind her back. When Sarah opened the door, Chloe's eyes were red, like she'd been crying the whole drive over. "I made this," Chloe said quietly, pulling out a small box. Inside was a homemade cake, lopsided and simply decorated, with a crooked drawing of a green dinosaur piped on top in shaky frosting. "I know it's not as good as the one from the bakery," Chloe said, her voice trembling, "but I wanted to make it myself. For Liam." Sarah felt her throat tighten. She stepped aside and let her niece in. Liam came running from the living room, stopping short when he saw Chloe standing there. For a moment, neither of them said anything. Then Chloe knelt down slowly to his level. "Liam, I'm really sorry about your birthday cake. What I did was mean, and it wasn't fair to you. You didn't deserve that. I made you a new one. It's not perfect, but I tried really hard." Liam looked at the crooked dinosaur cake, then up at Chloe's tearful face. Slowly, he smiled. "It has a dinosaur," he said simply. "I like it." Chloe let out a shaky laugh, wiping her eyes. "I promise I'll never do anything like that again. Ever." Sarah watched quietly from the doorway, her heart aching with a mixture of relief and sadness. This was healing, real and imperfect, exactly the way healing usually looked. Over the following weeks, the consequences of that reunion rippled through the family in quiet, steady ways. Diane, faced with the undeniable truth in front of everyone she cared about impressing, found herself distanced from many relatives who had once admired her polished exterior. Invitations to gatherings grew less frequent. Conversations grew shorter, more careful. It wasn't dramatic or cruel, simply the natural result of trust that had finally run out. Aunt Carol, usually gentle and non-confrontational, was the one who finally sat down with Diane privately. She didn't yell or lecture. She simply asked her, quietly and firmly, to get help, real help, from a therapist, to understand where all that old jealousy and control had come from, and to make sure it stopped with her. Instead of passing further down to Chloe. To Sarah's surprise, Diane actually listened. Whether out of genuine reflection or fear of losing her family entirely, Sarah wasn't sure. But a month later, Diane sent Sarah a short, awkward text. "I started seeing someone, a therapist. I'm not asking you to forgive me right away, but I wanted you to know I'm trying." Sarah stared at the message for a long time before replying. "That's a good first step. Liam and I aren't going anywhere, but things need to be different from now on." "They will be," Diane wrote back. "I promise." Sarah didn't know yet if that promise would hold. Old patterns didn't disappear overnight, and trust, once broken so deeply, wasn't rebuilt in a single conversation. But for the first time, there was an opening, a small crack of honesty where there had once been only denial. As for Chloe, something shifted in her after that day at Sarah's house. She began visiting more often, not out of guilt, but out of genuine effort to rebuild what she had broken. She started tutoring Liam in reading on weekends, patiently sitting beside him on the couch, sounding out dinosaur names together, turning what had once been a source of pain into something warm and familiar. One afternoon, months later, Sarah watched from the kitchen as Chloe helped Liam build a small cardboard volcano for a school project, both of them laughing over glue that wouldn't stick and glitter that went everywhere. It was such a simple, ordinary moment, but to Sarah, it meant everything. This was what justice actually looked like, she realized. Not screaming matches or dramatic punishments, but small, steady changes. A teenager learning to make amends instead of tearing others down. A sister forced to finally face years of buried resentment instead of hiding behind sweetness and denial. A little boy once terrified and humiliated, slowly learning to trust again on Liam's next birthday. Almost a year later, Sarah planned another party. Smaller this time, quieter, but filled with real warmth. Chloe arrived early to help set up, carefully arranging dinosaur decorations exactly the way Liam liked them. When it came time for the cake, Chloe had insisted on baking it herself again, this time with careful practice, resulting in a surprisingly good dinosaur-shaped cake. Green and lopsided in the most charming way. As everyone gathered to sing happy birthday, Sarah watched her son's face glow with pure joy. Completely different from the tear-streaked face she remembered from the year before, Diane came too. Quieter than she used to be, more careful with her words. Watching from a respectful distance rather than trying to control the spotlight. It wasn't perfect. Old habits occasionally flickered back, small comments here and there, quickly cut and corrected. But it was progress. Real, hard-earned progress. When Liam blew out his candles, he made a wish, eyes squeezed shut in fierce concentration. Sarah smiled, wondering quietly what a 7-year-old, now turning 8, might wish for after everything that had happened. Later that evening, as she tucked him into bed, Liam looked up at her thoughtfully. "Mommy, can I tell you my wish now?" "Of course, baby, I wish that nobody ever has a birthday like my last one again," he said softly. "Not me, not anybody." Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she kissed his forehead gently. "That's a beautiful wish." "Sweetheart," she whispered as she turned off his light and stepped quietly into the hallway. Sarah allowed herself, finally, to feel something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Peace. The kind of peace that comes not from revenge, not from anger, but from truth finally spoken, wounds finally acknowledged, and a family slowly, imperfectly, learning how to do better. It hadn't been about punishing Diane or humiliating Chloe. It had been about protecting her son, and in doing so, breaking a cycle that had quietly hurt too many people for far too long. And for Sarah, that was worth more than any revenge ever could have been.